Hello, everyone. Welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gail Embt. I am the head of the Parent Inner Circle program from MindClub America. MindClub America is a company that provides behavioral health services, remote and in person, across the nation. We serve individuals who are struggling with substance use and mental health issues, whether you are in the workplace or whether you are retired or an individual or at home. We help you connect to mental health services. My role at Mind Club is to work with the families of individuals who are struggling because as a family member, we love and want our child, relative, loved one to find recovery, to quit drugs and alcohol. We know it's an incredible struggle for them and it's a struggle for us. And the Parent Inner Circle is designed to help us connect with each other and connect to skills and knowledge and the support that's going to make us the most powerful advocates for our loved one and the most powerful abilities to help motivate our loved one to just make changes in their life and in their relationship to substance use. So today, because I know this is a really stressful time of year, I wanted to share some of the things I've learned can be huge roadblocks for us in us getting through the holiday season in a calm and confident manner. And for those of you who can put something into the chat, I'd love it if you would share in the chat just if you find the holidays stressful, and if you do, if you have a particular thing that causes stress. Is it an event? Is it a relative? Is it a situation that you find yourself in? Is it an expectation that somebody may have for you or your loved one that causes you stress? Probably there's a lot of different things, right? It's probably not just one. Melissa says, I feel stressed because I no longer have my children to celebrate the holidays with. The addiction has them both. That sounds to me like there's a lot of sadness around that and how the holiday looks different without them and worrying about them. Jack, overextending yourself. Yeah, I can understand that. Abigail, around extended family members, the difference between what your child is doing and what other people's children are doing. That's really powerful. That's another form of grief. And then a lot of things come along with that. So we know that things come up during the holidays that we don't have to confront or deal with during the rest of the year. And I'm going to start talking about some of these and some tools and things we can do to try to make the burden a little bit lighter for ourselves and a little less stressful and allow us to be more responsive and calmer during this season. We all feel these in different ways. It's okay. I mean, our lives are different and the lives of our children are different. And so it's normal, these things that we're feeling. So today, while we're together, what I want to do with us is talk about some of the things that make it more stressful during the holidays. And we've identified some in the chat. Extended family members being around, family members we want with us, not with us, expectations. So we're going to talk about some of the things that we don't necessarily always think about as to why it's so much more stressful for us at this time of year. And I've kind of identified what are sort of the four biggest roadblocks to thriving during the season because they trigger our stress, because they knock us off balance, and they make us less calm, less confident, and less capable than we might be at other times of the year. For each of the four that we identify, I am going to share a couple of tools that have been proven to be very effective at helping us to sidestep the pitfalls of stress and helping us to, in fact, keep our calm and our ability to move forward. And then at the end of this, you'll have the tools and you'll have a much better understanding of what is tripping us up. That's the way I think of it, roadblock. And you'll have an ability to use the tools. So let's go into what my holiday was like before I learned some new ways to do things. And quite frankly, holiday stress was a daily event for me. I was guilty without realizing it of always trying to create the perfect holiday. And for me, perfect meant a holiday that played out according to my view of what how it should be. And I give you the example of I had this vision. I've got two boys and a husband, and I had this vision of Christmas morning where the four of us would all come together around the Christmas tree, opening gifts, trying them out, laughing. Think It's a Wonderful Life Christmas morning. Think Miracle on 30, right? The Hollywood morning. And the more I tried to get everyone to eat the Christmas breakfast at the same time, one of my kids couldn't stand what we were serving. To open the presents together, I had another child who would always be up until whenever and would refuse to get up early. So the rest of us are left, wandering around waiting on this one individual. The other one, meanwhile, would pop out of bed like a jack in the box at 6 a.m. ready to go. Can we open presents? Can we open presents? Well, no, because I, your mother, want us all to do it together. And so we're going to wait for your sibling who, who knows when they're going to show up. And you can see how that's going to create friction, right? And then if I did get them together, it wouldn't be at 7 a.m. in the morning. It might not be until 11 a.m. in the morning. So some people are really ticked off. They've had to wait this long. And then, one child would just open his every gift and then disappear, leave. And none of this was coming together the way I wanted it to come together. So what we ended up with was tension and arguments and a lot of unhappiness. And my moment really came when I accepted that what I wanted were the feelings of joy and happiness. And in my case, I became willing to explore other ways that might lead us to joy and happiness, as opposed to the direction I was taking everyone, which was irritation and anger and upset and unhappiness. And being willing to see that other activities, other paths might be more effective at getting me to what I wanted, which was some joy and some love on our holiday morning. I was learning a new way to show up. And I I tried. I mean, I didn't like the fact our holidays were unhappy, so I read everything I could get my hands on and I watched videos. I tried harder to tell myself to stay calm, and I didn't actually see change until I found the craft approach, which was based in love and connection and communication. And what everybody said to me is, you're going to strengthen your connection and communication by letting go of your control over an outcome. And I was lucky enough to find a coach and a community of people who were working these skills in real time. And so I could not only learn about the approaches, I was willing to give them a try. I could try them out. I could see that they worked in real life. And then I was really getting a new way to understand myself and my child. And so that's why what I have done is really turn this into my mission. And those of you who know me know it's my mission to help families so that you too can try new paths to getting where you're trying to get with your child and help you to not only increase your calm and your confidence, but to get through the holidays in a way that is connected to your being present, but may not be perfection, right? My example was my vision of perfection for the holiday. I had to let go of that. It was one of the things I had to learn as I went through this. And I'm here to tell you that you can transform both your journey and their journey. And you can find calm and confidence even though your child may continue to struggle and may be struggling throughout the holidays. I know it can be hard to accept, but part of being in a community of people is that it may be hard for me to accept, but as I start hearing other people's stories of how things changed for them, I begin to believe that my story could change too. And I was willing to do things differently. And then I found my story change. So let's talk about holiday stress. It's predictable. I don't know anybody who says, wow, the holiday season is such a relaxing time. In fact, if somebody here says my holidays are always relaxed and happy, please put that into the chat. because the rest of us are going to want to talk to you, right? It's just not that way. Holiday stress is predictable because there are things that happen during the holiday seasons over and over again. First is we have high expectations. I gave you the example of my expectation of my vision for Christmas morning. I also had visions for the family gatherings, for the participation by my fam children in family activities. I had a lot of expectations as I'm kind of that person, and my journey has been to let go, learn how to let go in the service of getting to where I really want to be, which is connected to my children safe and sober and in recovery. Holiday stress, there's going to be unpredictable behavior, and I'm not just talking about our loved one who's struggling. Everybody, it seems, becomes unpredictable during the holiday season, right? And they become unpredictable because there may be old family dynamics that kick in. You know, you haven't seen your cousins and your aunts and your uncles all year, and all of a sudden you expect to come together and for it to all be all love and happiness, and that's typically not what happened. I had an Aunt Jane, honest to God. Her name was Jane, Aunt Jane. And Aunt Jane was super critical, really high expectations of how you were going to behave. You had to behave with perfect manners around Aunt Jane. And I had two boys, one of whom ADHD off the charts. I had no expectation that my boys were going to be able to behave the way they were supposed to behave. And yet here we were going to be at Aunt Jane's house for 2 to 2.5 hours. Talk about old family dynamics. You know, it wasn't like Scrooge spent a night with the ghosts and emerged the next morning completely transformed on Christmas morning. Aunt Jane would go to bed on Christmas Eve and she'd wake up on Christmas morning and she was still Aunt Jane, highly critical with a really, very definite idea of how children should behave. And she was kind of she was definitely in the era of children should be seen and not heard. And my boys were typically both seen and heard. So I dreaded the family gatherings. The other thing that we typically everybody experiences during the holiday season is emotional exhaustion. And that exhaustion comes from not only doing our normal caregiving to our children and our family, but typically we'll have a friend who may have need some additional support. We might have elder parents that we're taking care of who might need some additional support. So we actually have the burden on us even higher during the holiday season. And then something we don't always think about is grief. A couple of you in the chat are dancing around, or you know that you're talking about grief. Grief for what you hope the family environment would be like, the family life would be like, the situation your children would be in, and they're not. And it becomes more obvious during the holiday season. And dealing with that grief, understanding that grief, that's actually one of the roadblocks we're going to talk about tonight. And what we're going to focus on is making peace with the fact that we can't control others. I couldn't make Aunt Jane enjoy my children, and I couldn't make Aunt Jane not criticize my children in those days, right? I couldn't control her behavior. She was going to be Aunt Jane the way she was the other 364 days a year. She was going to be that way on Christmas when we went over to her house. But I could work on how I dealt with that. And I could get myself to a place where I didn't stress before I ever got to her house about what might happen at her house. And these are where this was a really important lesson for me that we're going to talk about. I could only control what I did, what I asked for, what I expected, and what I allowed to have happen around me. And learning how to manage that is a really powerful component of getting yourself to calm and confidence. So, what are the 4 roadblocks to thriving during the holiday season that we're going to talk about tonight? The first one is planning for 100%. We tend to enter the holiday season planning to perform at our normal capacity. We think we can do as many tasks as we usually do, that we can think as clearly as we usually do, that we can power through activities as we usually do. And we're going to learn that maybe we have to make an adjustment. Another roadblock to thriving is over focusing on the outcome that we want. And I talked about that a little bit in terms of my own challenge, which is exactly this one. I have a bit of all of these. So the planning for 100% is one of them, but the over focusing on the outcome we want is one I'm always having to remind myself that that's a barrier to thriving, because I'm going to be trying to do something that's not possible to do and expending a lot of energy on something that's not possible for me to make happen. The next thing that we're going to talk about that is a barrier to thriving during the holiday season is coping with the reactions and the criticism from family and friends, because I knew Aunt Jane was going to criticize me. How do I handle that other than running away, which was the first thing I wanted to do, except I had to show up, avoiding her at the event, and or yelling at my children to try to get them to behave in a way that Aunt Jane wanted them to behave, because I didn't want them to upset her, right? So coping with the reaction and criticism, family and friends, I created a lot of the stress on myself. And the fourth roadblock that we're going to talk about today is dealing with the sadness and the grief that we carry. These four roadblocks are most likely to predict the holiday meltdowns for children and for us as parents. So let's go in and take a look at these in more detail. Roadblock number one, planning for 100%. Anybody been here when your children were younger, trying to get that perfect gift, the thing, the hot toy, right? Now trying to grab the right food, the cheeses, the whatever, if you happen to be hosting a party, or the hostess gift if you're going somewhere else. Okay. It's a fact of life that holidays bring additional to-do items, more than our normal number of things to do. We have the work of helping family members cope with the holidays. We've got gift shopping. We've got the additional financial burden of gifts or holiday parties planning and paying for. We've got once a year activities. You're going to so-and-so's house where you haven't been in a year. I'm going to Aunt Jane's house. I did go more than once a year, but you got more errands to do. And holidays unlock our emotions. And this is why planning for 100% is a challenge, because we are dealing with a compressed time frame, the increased financial drain, social and family pressures, grief, loss, unmet expectations. We've got all of this emotional and physical burden, and yet we plan as though we can perform at 100% of our normal capacity. It's just not possible. So we set ourselves up for stress and anxiety and frustration. Let me pause for a second. Do you understand this? We have all these extra things on us, and we're still thinking we can perform at our normal capacity, whatever normal is for you. And that's going to cause stress because you're constantly trying to do what you normally do, but you're carrying a lot of extra burdens. And so the reality is you cannot expect yourself to be the same capacity that you would be in a non-holiday time. How many of us have spent time thinking about that fact? I never did until I learned that it's normal that I am not able to perform at 100% of my normal capacity. Just a couple weeks ago, I had been caregiving one week and I'd come back and I jumped into the holiday planning activities and I was struggling. I wasn't getting through as much work as I should do. I wasn't getting as many of the household things done as I should do. And I was feeling myself getting more anxious and more stressed and more mad at myself. Like, Gail, you are so lazy. Why didn't you do this? So, holidays unlock all these emotions. So, how do you deal with this? So, don't jump on me for this. Wait a minute and think, let me talk about this. But there's a 60% rule that you can use that will reduce your holiday overload. And here's how you do it. You're going to plan your holiday as if you only have 60% of your usual capacity, right? And we've gone through why, because you have more emotional labor, because there's more unpredictability. You never know who's going to have what. The store might have what you need. They don't. You thought you'd only have to go two places to get it. You have to go four. If somebody wants to drop in unexpectedly, you have a dinner party for 10 and two people bail out suddenly. Now you've got everything changes. Yeah, an extra project comes in at work for those of us who are still working. You may need to buffer more time for dysregulated moments for yourself, for your child, because this is a tough time of year for your children as well. So it's very likely that they're going to be struggling with stress and anxiety at the same time. It's unlikely that you have to deal with. And when you overfunction, when you try to hit 100%, but you can really only have the capacity for 60, it's going to lead to stress and anxiety and burnout. And most importantly, you're going to find that you're going to start snapping at people, or you're going to be retreating. If that, whatever your normal coping mechanism is for stress and anxiety, you're going to find you starting to use it. So, how do we use the 60% rule? First is to identify roughly how many tasks can you get done in a week. In a normal week, you could go shopping twice, you could spend X amount of time picking out presents, Y amount of time making things if you're the kind of person who makes things, Z amount of time on work at work, an hour on work at home, however you normally divide up your week, and think of it in terms of blocks of activities. And think of your week as your full capacity as you normally would have 10 blocks of activities, and you're going to plan to only have 60%. So you're going to plan to only do 6 blocks of activities during the week. And I know you're going to initially think, oh, well, that means I'm going to have all this free time. But the way to use that free time is to think of it as your life happens buffer. That's the time that you know is going to get taken up by something unexpected. And you want to keep that 40% protected with boundaries. You want to protect your capacity. Now, if you find during a day that you've got a block of time that hasn't been taken up, maybe you could use it for something relating to helping you stay strong and recovered, self-care, right? Or maybe you could use it to knock out an additional task. But if you've planned for 60%, when you get to the end of the day, even your craziest day, you'll still be on track. That's huge at reducing your guilt, your rushing, and you turning into someone who's just reacting. The next roadblock to the holidays is over focusing on outcomes. So let's say we're starting to use the tool, the 60% rule. I'm not going to plan that I'm going to get 100% of my normal activities done every day. I'm going to plan 60%, and then that 40% is going to be for the life happens, the unexpected that comes up during the holiday season. Roadblock number 2, over focusing on the outcomes. It shows up as you spend more time trying to make sure your child's in a particular mood, trying to guarantee their sobriety, trying to make sure they show up when you've said they're going to show up in the manner that you've said they're going to show up. Doing what I was trying to do, control the tone of the holiday. Oh, I want everybody to have a happy holiday. It has to happen in the morning, and all 4 of us have to be together, and we have to have first had breakfast together, and then we have to go open presents together, and then we have to enjoy our presents together, right? I was trying to control that way too much. I was focused on that outcome, right? Those activities had to happen in the order I wanted. Or maybe you're over focusing on outcomes is you're not going to allow conflict at all costs. So you're constantly on hyper alert for anything that might look like a conflict and ready to jump in. Or maybe you think that if you can anticipate everybody's needs, everybody will be happy and it'll come out the way you want to. But that approach to focusing on the outcomes, to trying to control things to end up the way you want them to end up, just causes us stress. And what happens when we're stressed? We're not patient, we're not calm, we're not confident. Other people respond to our stress by becoming stressed. The control creates the pressure. So over focusing on the outcome, one outcome right there, right? I'm going to hit that bullseye. That's why I thought this bullseye was a good example, because anytime you feel yourself focusing on an outcome, think about this image of the bullseye. You're not trying to hit the bullseye during the holiday season because it doesn't happen very often. You're trying to get through the holidays as close to the bullseye as you can. But you know what? It's okay if you're out here in the white. You've still gotten everything going in the right direction. So how do we do this? What do I mean? Okay, Gail, great. You tell me not to focus on the outcome. What do you want me to do about it? Recognize that these expectations create the pressure and can lead to the disappointment, and work on releasing your shoulds. Everybody should be happy at my party. Nobody should have a fight. My children should behave this way because it's the holiday. They should be grateful. They should be happy. They should be excited. Let go of the shoulds. And here's a little mantra to remind yourself to stay with what's happening. I can hope for a good moment, but I don't have to control it. I can hope for a good moment, but I don't have to control it. There's so much power in this phrase because when you're hoping for something, you're going to be looking for it. When you're trying to control an outcome, you're actually going to miss a lot of good moments because you're going to be focused on the one thing that you want the way you want it, and all the other things that may be going right, you're not going to see. Another expectation release script that you can say to yourself is there are many paths to joy and loving. This concept that if what you're looking for is connection, communication, some joy, demonstrations of loving, there are many different ways that that can be shared and seen. And when we let go of our expectation, we open ourselves up to be seeing that. Simply something like let go, stay present. Find a little phrase that works for you to remind you to stay with what's happening right now and helps you to remain connected to the feelings that you want rather than focusing on the action that might take place. The next tool is similar to expectations, and it's outcome letting go of the outcome. And an outcome trap sounds like I've got to have one whole good day. They have to show up and behave. For how long? What does behave mean? Is there really only one thing they can do to behave, or are there many things that they might be able to do to behave? This year's got to be different. Last year was so awful. This year's got to be different. I mean, whatever I can, it's going to be different. What does that mean? You're focusing on an outcome you can't even identify. So, how do you know when you're working on the right thing? How do you know whether it's happening? When you let go of the outcome, this year must be different, and go for this year will be different. I don't know how, but it'll be different. I open myself up to being flexible and to seeing small moments of peace, small moments of progress, and small moments of joy, even if the whole day isn't perfect. So let go of outcomes. Outcome attachment, stress, resentment, and conflict. Outcome flexibility, we find calm, we can see the spaces, and we can see the small wins. So here's an example of letting go of the outcomes. The first thing you do is pause. Let's say originally you would have said, my child has got to be calm, sober, and pleasant at the holiday dinner. That's focusing on an outcome. So the first thing you want to do is pause. Give yourself some space. The second thing you can do is ask yourself a question. If the holiday dinner doesn't go the way I want, what are three possible endings that I could live with? So you want the holiday dinner, you want your child to be calm, sober, and pleasant for the entire holiday dinner. But what about if you were to ask yourself, what possible three endings could I live with? So the next step is to name three different outcomes, three different things that could happen. At least one of those should be neutral. And it could just be, it could be there was a blow up, but it wasn't as severe as it was in the past. I actually had this situation very recently where somebody I was working with, their child had a meltdown in the middle of the night. And I was talking with the parent after the fact, and the parent said, well, my child has been having meltdowns in the middle of the night, for years now. And they had a meltdown in the middle of the night the other night. They called me at 2 in the morning, and here's what happened. And I said, so what do you think about it? And they said, well, the meltdown wasn't as severe as it used to be. Yes, they called at 2 in the morning. Yes, they had an issue, but relatively speaking, the issue was minor, and they were able to resolve it themselves without any additional help other than me being on the phone and listening to them talk it through. Okay, well, that's progress. And that parent had the ability to see that their child was doing better which they wouldn't have been able to do if the only thing they'd accepted was, in that case, that their child never calls them at 2 o'clock in the morning with an issue. But because they had experience and because they were willing to see there were different paths and that there could be different outcomes from a 2 o'clock in the morning phone call, they were able to understand that one of them was actually kind of neutral. They called, yes, but it wasn't a crisis. Coming back to my example of the child, you want your child to be calm, sober, and pleasant during the holiday dinner. Three acceptable endings might be, well, maybe they'll only come for a short time and they'll leave early. Maybe the dinner is awkward, but there's no major conflict. Well, I could stay regulated and leave if it becomes too much for me. So those are three different scenarios. And the next piece is to remind yourself that more than one ending is okay. I'm going to stop here for a minute. The really important points of this are rather than looking for a particular outcome, my child has to be calm, sober, and pleasant at the holiday dinner. Pause and ask yourself, what are three scenarios or endings that I could live with? Name them. Make sure that one of them is at least neutral. They're not all positive and right. And remind yourself that more than one possible ending will be okay. It's also really powerful, which you may not notice, for those of us who don't like uncertainty, right? If I have one outcome and only one outcome that I'm okay with, then I'm going to spend the entire time worrying about whether that outcome is going to happen. But if I've thought through what could be three different outcomes or three different endings that I could be okay with, I've got much more certainty because it's probable that one of these three is going to play out and my stress level goes down. Does that make sense to people? Can you see how that plays out? Okay. Roadblock number 3 is family criticism. We all know it. We all face it. We all hear, why can't you control your child? You got to be tougher. Stop enabling them. They're ruining everything. And it can be a firestorm for us trying to deal with that. It hurts. And we feel ashamed that we haven't been able to get our children to, was put into the chat, that our children aren't doing what their siblings are doing, or their cousins are doing, or their classmates are doing. We don't need to explain to anybody why. We know we're good parents. I know you're good parents. You're here. You're trying to work on things. You're trying to understand. You're trying to figure this out. You are good parents. You need to have ways to communicate so that people have choices as to what they say to you, not just jump in with their own opinions, right? They're not living in your family. They're not loving your child. They're not dealing with what you're dealing with. All right. So what could we say? Don't try to convince them that they're wrong, and don't try to convince them necessarily that you're doing the best or the right thing. Focus instead on bringing the pressure down, keeping the conversation safe, setting up some boundaries around what you're willing to let them say and not say to you or to your child. Be clear about what you need and want from them, gives them choices about continuing the conversation with you or your family or your child, right? So the clearer you can be allows them to know where you stand and what is acceptable or not acceptable to you, what boundary you have around how they communicate about what you're doing, about your parenting, about your child's behavior, about your child's achievements. Short, calm, and firm. All right. So, unwanted advice. Here's an example of what you might try saying. Our holidays are unpredictable. You don't need to go into an explanation of all the things that could go wrong or all the things that you're trying to juggle. It can be unpredictable. We want things to be simple and calm. Thank you for being flexible if our plans shift. One example, if somebody is trying to give you advice. You could also give them, here's another script. I appreciate your concern. We are handling things in the way that works for our family. And right now, I don't need additional suggestions or advice. I appreciate your concern, but we are handling things in a way that works with our family. I don't need advice right now. I don't need suggestions right now. I have all the suggestions that I can handle. That makes sense? Anybody feel like they could try this with family members or relatives? Has anybody tried this with family members or relatives? The power of this is in that it sets up a clear expectation of what you're willing to hear and not hear. But the other power of this, which we don't realize until we do it, is that you have this already scripted for yourself in your head, or if you, like me, and write things down, write it out and put it up that piece of paper in your pocket so that when the situation comes up, you're prepared. You don't have to think about it. You don't even have to let yourself go to the emotional place that they're trying to take you. You simply have a, not right now. We have what works for our family. Thank you for your concern. Melissa, yes, absolutely. You can use a very simple, similar phrase like this to explain why you might not be seeing your children during the holidays. Yeah, nobody needs to chime in on what's going on. You're doing the best you can. These scripts are to allow you to communicate that to the people around you. All right. And the next one is the next roadblock to thriving during the holiday season is the sadness and the grief that we feel. It is very, very common that we grieve. And it took me a long time to understand. Somebody had to explain to me that what's going on for me was grieving. The loss of the holiday you hoped for. There might be fears about your child's safety. There might be feelings of jealousy about normal families, how other families are doing. There's certainly exhaustion because we may not recognize the grief. And even if we recognize the grief, we're carrying it. And it's the holiday season. So you're going to maybe trying to carry it inside yourself, right? And there can be isolation. We can isolate when we're sad or we're grieving. Everybody's so happy. Everybody's all family oriented. Everybody's celebrating all the good things that are going on, and you don't feel like you can be in that same place. The first thing we want to do is acknowledge what we're feeling and name it. I am sad because I'm here to tell you it is normal to be sad and it's okay to be sad. And as soon as you can name it for yourself, I am grieving because, I am sad because, it loses its power to control you. And I don't know the science behind that, but boy, do I know that that's true. For those of you who do breathing with me, if you breathe in, I'm grieving because, that's the reality. And it's okay. And we come back to the grief is a heavy emotion and it reduces our energy and it impacts our ability to problem solve. We come back to the 60% rule. Yeah, I'm grieving. Oh, wow. I need to think about planning for 60%, not 100% capabilities. All right. How do we do this? Ask yourself, what am I mourning this year? What part of me is hurting? What compassion do I need or would I like to have? Talking to ourselves very simply, it's amazing how this is going to reduce the grasp that grief has on us. I honor my sadness. I let go of the holiday I imagined, and I'm going to stay open to small, peaceful moments. It doesn't mean I honor my sadness. I have real reasons to be sad. I'm going to let go of the vision that I had for the holiday, and I'm going to open myself up to small, peaceful moments. This shift in how we see things and how we talk to ourselves will lighten the emotional load on us and give us the space to continue to make real positive connection, even in the midst of feeling the grief. In addition to being aware of the grief and letting go, is being prepared that things are going to come up. The example that Abigail gave, she knows that she's going to be seeing family members and their children who are doing things that she wishes her daughter was doing at this point in time and may not be doing. So she can anticipate a stressor. The stressor is going to be seeing other families with children who are getting A's and whatever, right? That are different from her child. Notice what you're feeling and what you're thinking, which are your early warning signs that you're going to be tossed into grief, and choose how you want to show up. Do you want to allow yourself to be tossed into grief and fall apart? In my case, I would isolate. That was how I dealt with it. But when I was able to say, my son is failing out of school, and we're going to be with his cousin, who's a straight A student and working on his college applications. And I knew that that made me tense and sad, and I could decide how I wanted to show up. I want to be calm, and I would like to be in a place to congratulate their child for the good job they're doing. So I'm going to pre-plan how I'm going to handle this situation. I'm going to script out what I'm going to say. I'm going to prepare by saying, my child is on a different path, and that's okay. There are many more paths through life. Their child is on a path to the next stage in their life, and my child is on a different path. And my child is going to find their way, but it's a different way. I'll tell you, my oldest son and I talked about his path through substance use and his struggles. And on the one hand, he talks about, well, I didn't do college and I didn't really finish high school. I mean, it was COVID, and so they passed everybody through. You didn't have to do any work, they just gave you a pass. But he never went to college. And I grieved that. I mean, I never occurred to me my child wouldn't go to college. But we also talk about how he has so much more understanding of life and life choices and than many, if not almost all, of his friends because of his path to get to where he is now, because of his path through treatment programs and substance use and 12-step programs and all kinds of therapy. He has this depth of understanding that a lot of his peers will never get in their entire lives, right? So I could just grieve the fact he didn't go to college, or I can look at my pre-planned response, which is he has a different path through life and he will learn from it and he will grow. I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if my children hadn't gone through their struggles with substance use and mental illness. And I like to think that the positive side of that is I'm able to share what I've learned with others, that I'm able to show them there's hope, there's new paths, there's things that you can do. All right. Tool number 2, grief preparation. Identify your stressors, notice your early warning signs, choose how you want to show up, and pre-plan your response. So, for example, my child may show up late or high or not at all. Prepare with even if statements. Even if they show up late, here's what's going to happen. Maybe you put in place a calm exit plan. Even if they show up late, I'm going to greet them with love, but then I'm going to ask them to leave. Set up some emotional buffer time. You might need to step away for a little bit to remind yourself of what you're planning to do. And for those of you who work with me on some of the breathing and some of the mindfulness tools that we do, use those to help connect yourself to, I'm in the present right now. I'm not in the future. I don't know how that's going to play out, and I can't change the past, but I'm here in the present. Having a plan helps your nervous system be prepared. All right. I'm going to wrap this up because I realize I'm about to run over time. So, a quick recap. For us to thrive during the holidays and overcome these 4 roadblocks, we want to focus on our ability to let go and see multiple paths. We want to look at, can we be flexible about what kinds of things are going to be okay for us to live with? Can we set some boundaries with the people around us who are likely to share feedback and criticism? Plan for 60%. Give yourself some grace. With everything in your lives, it's not realistic to think you can perform at 100%. And focus on pre-planning ahead of time. Consistency matters, and new approaches like these are going to give you new outcomes. Instead of stress and survival, you stand the chance to thrive and to give your child an easier path through the holiday on their side. Feel free to email me and connect with me. I will answer anybody and every question that you send to me. That's my commitment to you. Okay? So I appreciate everybody coming here. I hope this has been useful for everyone. And again, if you have any questions, I will be there. I promise I will respond to every one of them personally. So with that, thank you so much.